We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we're joined again by Liberty Nation's chief political correspondent, Graham J. Noble. Now, earlier in the show, we were talking the aftermath of the vice presidential debate, which is a good show. If you haven't heard it, go back, listen again. If you have heard it, go back, listen again. It was a good show. Do it anyway. And what
Did you mention it was a good show?
It was a good show. Did I mention that? Yeah. What I would like to move on to now is really talk about the election 2024. We're roughly 4 weeks out, and each team is failing to pull ahead of the other in any substantial way. What do you think the roadmap for the next 4 weeks is going to look like, Graham?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, for a start, the number of polls that are showing this to be such a tight race, I'm not sure that I buy that. It seems a little, I don't know. That seems a little strange to me. And the only reason why I say that is I'm not doing that to suggest that I'm favoring either candidate. But what I am saying is that, Kamala Harris's rallies, the people know this has been filmed and posted to social media, that, she's bussing in people to attend her campaigns, and also she's doing these little bits where, like, she went to the sandwich shop in Pennsylvania there, and they actually threw out all the regular customers and replaced them with people who were put there in the restaurant specifically to make it look as if she was going around and asking questions of regular customers. And these things are being documented. And so it's like, where you have to ask yourself, where exactly is her support coming from if she's having to do these things? So I find that an interesting facet of this campaign.
And what about Donald Trump? We have noticed that since the 2 assassination attempts, he has been doing smaller campaign events, but I'm not sure that these smaller events are necessarily a reflection of a lack of support, but rather one of security. I might be wrong on that, though. What's your take?
No, I believe you're exactly right, Mark, because we do know, for instance, that just maybe a week or two ago, the Trump campaign had been planning a large outdoor event in somewhere in Wisconsin. And the Secret Service basically told him, well, the initial story that came out was the Secret Service told him, you can't go to Wisconsin because we don't have the assets to protect you. I believe that turned out to be, that wasn't quite the entire truth of the story. What the Secret Service actually told him was that, you can't have a huge outdoor event. It's got to be an indoor event, so that we can more easily control the security environment. And I think that's what's going on here. Yes.
Okay. So essentially, both candidates are going to be spending the remaining 4 weeks crisscrossing the country, going to all of the swing states. And it's in the swing states that the polling really gets granular, because if we look at the polling averages, you have national polls put Kamala Harris a couple of points ahead, which is interesting, but it's not really indicative of anything, because there are more people in California and New York that kind of outweigh the other places across the country. But when you get into the battleground polling, I mean, that is fractional. That is absolutely fractional. And I guess it's got to come down to whoever runs the best ground game in 3 or 4 states will lock up the election. Do you think both campaigns have the energy for it? Because, and this, I might be in a minority of one here, but it seems to me that there isn't as much energy on either side today as there was a couple of weeks ago.
It does seem to be the case, doesn't it? I must admit, you're not in a minority of, even if we're perhaps in a minority of 2, I tend to agree with you.
The individual, the greatest minority protections in the world.
That's exactly right. Yeah, wasn't it? It is interesting that there does seem to be, I'm not going to say a lack of energy, but less energy. the whole joy campaign that Kamala Harris kind of was firing on all cylinders when she first kind of became the nominee and replaced Joe Biden for the 2024 race. There was a lot of energy. It was a very high energy campaign. I mean, there was no substance to it, perhaps, but it was very high energy, and it was all about joy, and and everyone's going to get a puppy and all this kind of stuff. And
It
now
was very Winfrey-esque, wasn't it?
it
And
was
you'll get a tax break, and you'll get
right.
some handouts, and you'll get...
Yeah. And now it does seem to be a kind of almost like a lower key thing here. And I'm not sure that I could give you a fantastic rationale as to why that is. I do actually believe that the two assassination attempts targeting Donald Trump possibly contributed to that.
Yes, it's one of the key uh, things that were talked about in the wake of both of those attempts was that there needs to be a toning down of vitriol on
Mm.
both sides, and I think that although they're still trying to make out the case that each one will be the de facto end of democracy as it's known in a republic,
Mm.
I think that really is curtailing some of the bravado that each side wants to put out. But I think you're very astute to point out that this whole joy campaign thing, it hasn't reared its head in at least the last week or so. I haven't seen that anywhere. I haven't seen the post saying we're bringing joy back to America. It's almost as though they thought that was a good campaign slogan and then ditched it.
Yeah, I think they missed the mark completely on that actually, because I think that that whole almost unfounded optimism
Hmm.
was not working, because I think they quickly realized, and perhaps they haven't even realized, but they may have realized now that a lot of voters, even people who probably were going to, intended the entire time that they were going to vote for Joe Biden, and then when Joe Biden was, I'm not going to say stepped down because I believe that he was basically shoved aside. I don't think they realized that even people were without question intending to vote for her, are saying, look, I don't want to hear about the joy and the rainbows and all that kind of stuff. I want to hear about what you're going to do about this economy and what you're going to do about inflation and and the immigration system. I think people were like, enough with the joy already. Tell us what you are going to do and be specific.
Yes, it's something that's actually very apparent in more modern. You know what? I shouldn't even say more modern ones because it's been a facet of presidential elections for a very long time. Is the slogan and the sloganeering involved? And Kamala Harris went from joy as the slogan, tried out a new way forward, then realized that that means that essentially she's trying to cut herself off from her previous 3.5 years, which is a record well, 4 years, I guess,
Mhm.
almost 4 years, is a record that she has to at least try and bolster because it's, I'll do the job once you give it to me,
Yeah.
but she's already been in the job. Um, and so they're struggling to find a working slogan, whereas Donald Trump's been quite smart with this, I think. 2016 was Make America Great Again. And now it's back to MAGA again, Make America Great Again. But it's also MAHA, isn't it? Make America Healthy Again with the infusion of Robert F. Kennedy.
Yeah.
Graham, final word for you. If you could suggest a new campaign slogan for Miss Harris, what would it be?
So yeah, a new slogan for Kamala Harris. Well, I think if she was going to be brutally honest about what she is actually running on, her new campaign slogan should be, I am not Donald Trump.
And that's a great final word. Graham J. Noble, thanks ever so much for joining us. And that's all we have time for on this week's special edition of Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network from our flagship station in the nation's capital, WWRC in Washington, D.C. I've been your host, Mark Angelides. I'd like to take a moment to thank our guests, Legal Affairs Editor Scott Cosenza and political analyst Graham J. Noble. And also to remind you, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. And all that leaves me to do is thank you, the listeners at home, for taking the time to tune in and join us each week. Thank you for being here. You are appreciated. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.